So you've tried deep breathing, you've downloaded the meditation apps, you've cut back on caffeine, started exercising, maybe even talked to a therapist. And yet, here you are at 3 in the morning, mind racing about something you said 6 years ago or a work deadline that's 3 weeks away. Sound familiar? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us are actively making our anxiety worse without even realizing it. And I'm not talking about lifestyle stuff. I'm talking about the actual neurological patterns we're reinforcing every single day that keep us trapped in this exhausting cycle. I spent years dealing with anxiety that just wouldn't quit. And it wasn't until I understood the actual neuroscience behind it that things started to click. So let's talk about why your anxiety keeps coming back, what's actually happening in your brain, and more importantly, how to break the pattern. The Anxiety Loop explained. First, we need to understand what anxiety actually is at a neurological level. Your amygdala, which is basically your brain's alarm system, is designed to detect threats and trigger your fight or flight response. The problem is, your amygdala can't tell the difference between a lion chasing you and your boss sending a vaguely worded email. Research from the University of Wisconsin-Madison found that people with chronic anxiety have an overactive amygdala that fires more frequently and more intensely than in non-anxious people. But here's where it gets worse. Every time you experience anxiety and then engage in certain behaviors to cope with it, you're actually strengthening the neural pathways that make you more anxious in the future. You're literally training your brain to be more anxious. A study published in the Journal of Neuroscience showed that avoidance behaviors prevent the prefrontal cortex from learning that the threat isn't real. Your thinking brain never gets the chance to override your emotional brain. So the next time a similar situation comes up, your amygdala fires even faster because, as far as your brain is concerned, avoiding the situation last time kept you safe. The safety behavior trap. This is what researchers call safety behaviors. And they're absolutely sabotaging your recovery. You feel anxious in social situations, so you always bring a friend with you. You're worried about having a panic attack in public, so you always sit near exits. You're anxious about making mistakes at work, so you triple-check everything and stay late to make sure it's perfect. These behaviors feel like they're managing your anxiety, but they're actually feeding it. A meta-analysis published in Clinical Psychology Review examined 79 studies on safety behaviors and found that they consistently prevent people from learning that their fears are unlikely to come true. When you rely on these crutches, you never give yourself the chance to realize that you'd actually be fine without them. Your brain logs the experience as, I survived because I had my safety behavior, not I survived because the situation wasn't actually dangerous. And here's the really frustrating part. According to research from the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, about 40 million adults in the US alone struggle with anxiety disorders, and globally, we're looking at around 300 million people, but only about 37% of people with anxiety disorders actually receive treatment. And even among those who do, many continue to struggle because they're unknowingly engaging in these patterns that maintain the anxiety. The reassurance trap. There's another pattern that's incredibly common and incredibly destructive: reassurance seeking. You feel anxious about something, so you ask your partner, your friend, your coworker if everything's okay. They tell you yes, and you feel better for maybe 10 minutes. Then the anxiety creeps back in, so you ask again and again. Research from the University of British Columbia found that reassurance seeking provides immediate but temporary anxiety relief, which actually reinforces the behavior. Your brain learns that when you're anxious, asking for reassurance makes it go away. But the relief is so short-lived that you end up needing more and more reassurance, more frequently. It's the same mechanism as addiction. The study found that people who frequently seek reassurance actually experience higher levels of anxiety over time, compared to those who learn to tolerate uncertainty. And here's the kicker. The people around you start to get frustrated with the constant need for reassurance, which then becomes another source of anxiety for you. The physical feedback loop. Now let's talk about something most people don't realize. Your body is constantly sending signals to your brain, and those signals can either calm anxiety or amplify it. When you feel anxious, your heart rate increases, your breathing gets shallow, your muscles tense up. But here's what happens next. Your brain detects these physical sensations and interprets them as confirmation that something is wrong. A study in the journal Behavior Research and Therapy found that people with panic disorder are hypersensitive to their own bodily sensations. they notice their heart beating slightly faster, and their brain immediately jumps to, "Something's wrong, I'm in danger." This triggers more anxiety, which creates more physical symptoms, which triggers more anxiety. The researchers found that training people to interpret these sensations differently, to recognize that a faster heartbeat doesn't mean danger, significantly reduced panic attacks. This is why breathing exercises actually work when done correctly. Not because deep breathing is magic, but because slowing your breathing sends signals to your brain that you're safe. It interrupts the feedback loop. If this is resonating with you, hit that like button. It helps more people who are struggling with this find the information they need. The thought suppression paradox. Here's something that blew my mind when I first learned about it. Trying not to think about something makes you think about it more. There's a famous study called the white bear experiment, where participants were told not to think about a white bear. Guess what happened? They couldn't stop thinking about white bears. Research published in the journal Psychological Science found that thought suppression leads to a rebound effect, where the suppressed thoughts come back even more intensely than before. And because you've now labeled these thoughts as dangerous, your brain pays even more attention to them. The alternative that actually works, according to the research, is acceptance, not positive thinking, not distraction, but actually allowing the anxious thoughts to be there without fighting them. Studies on acceptance and commitment therapy have shown that people who learn to observe their anxious thoughts without trying to control or eliminate them experience significant reductions in anxiety over time, breaking the cycle. So how do you actually break these cycles? The research points to something called exposure with response prevention. Basically, you gradually face the things that make you anxious without engaging in your safety behaviors or avoidance. A comprehensive review published in JAMA Psychiatry found that it's one of the most effective treatments for anxiety disorders, with success rates between 60 and 90%. The key is that exposure has to be done gradually. You're not jumping into your worst fear. You're building a ladder of increasingly challenging situations and working your way up. While your brain learns that these situations aren't dangerous, each time you face something anxious without escaping or using safety behaviors, you're rewiring those neural pathways. Another crucial piece is learning to sit with physical discomfort. Studies show that panic attacks typically peak within 10 minutes and then naturally subside. When you learn this through experience, when you actually stay present during the discomfort instead of fighting it, the fear of the anxiety itself starts to dissolve. Look, I'm not going to tell you this is easy. Breaking these cycles takes time and often requires professional help. But understanding what's actually happening in your brain, recognizing the patterns that are keeping you stuck, that's the first step. You're not broken. Your brain is doing exactly what it's been trained to do. The good news is, you can retrain it. Stop avoiding the things that scare you. Stop seeking constant reassurance. Stop fighting your thoughts. Start building tolerance for discomfort. Start challenging your safety behaviors. The research is clear on this. It works, but you have to be willing to feel worse before you feel better. If you want more content on mental health, backed by actual science, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and remember, your anxiety makes sense. You just need to stop feeding it.